The state of the Texas border.
In Texas, we will not sit idly by while the president ignores the law and fails to secure the border.
As Governor Abbott lays out his new priorities, a judge sides against the president on immigration.
Will help people get on the right side of the law and get out of the shadows.
But what does the ruling mean for the millions of people living in the country illegally? Plus, gay marriage in Texas. After the rulings this week, what happens next? We'll tackle it all on State of Texas in depth. Good morning and thank you for joining us. I'm Josh Hinkle. This week, politics in Texas came more from the courtroom than the Capitol. Rulings on marriage and immigration completely changed the conversation. We'll delve into same-sex marriage shortly, but first, Texas has an estimated 1.5 million people living here illegally, so any national debate on immigration has a direct impact on the state. In Texas, much of the debate circles around border security. This week, Governor Greg Abbott made the border a top priority in his State of the State address.
That's why I have a comprehensive border security plan. My plan more than doubles the spending on securing the border. It has 500 new state troopers, more Texas Rangers who can focus on corruption, more funding for local law enforcement, more for technology to stop the transnational criminal activity that threatens every community in Texas.
In addition to the border, Abbott named 4 other emergency items: education, higher ed research, transportation funding, and ethics reform. Calling them emergency items means lawmakers can take action faster than state law allows for other bills. In that address and later in the week, Abbott talked about his win over the Obama administration in federal court. The judge blocked President Obama's Deferred Action for Parents of Americans and Lawful Permanent Resident, or DAPA, set to take effect this week. That was the executive action he took. As KXAN's Phil Prazen explains, the ruling will affect some 5 million people in the country, many of them in Texas.
Manuel Ramirez woke up disappointed.
Not the best news you could hear in the morning.
His parents brought him to America as a child, and much of his family thought they would be able to stay with President Obama's executive action until a federal judge said they couldn't.
I mean, my family, my friends, my colleagues, we were really excited that this was happening. A lot of folks have been, waiting for decades.
Governor Abbott's last lawsuit as Attorney General renewed the fight. More than 20 states joined the cause, galvanizing Republicans across the country and here in Texas, leading to the judge's ruling.
Well, it's a good response to a situation that clearly I think the president had really moved too far in one direction.
It's hard for us not to view it as a setback.
Matt Simpson from the ACLU of Texas says it won't be long until this decision is appealed.
We don't think it's going to be a long-term setback. We think it's temporary.
It's very close, but yet so far away.
For now, many people like some of Manuel's family are again not permitted to be in Texas. The wait continues to see whether an appellate court will let them stay. Phil Prazen, KXAN News.
Members of Congress quickly reacted to the ruling. Democratic Congressman Lloyd Doggett says the ruling this week will be rejected by higher courts, but Republican Michael McCall disagreed.
I applaud Governor Abbott for leading the charge with 27 states to rein in this overreach. And I'm optimistic, given the court's decision, which I've read, I'm optimistic on its chances on appeal.
I believe that the president's power to set immigration priorities as exercised by a number of prior presidents like President Reagan and President George Bush will ultimately be upheld. But this is troubling interference in the process.
Aside from immigration, this week's other big topic in Texas was same-sex marriage, as a lesbian couple from Austin becomes the first to marry in the state's history. Where we go from here, next on State of Texas in Depth. For the first time ever, a gay couple officially married in the state of Texas. The circumstances were unique, though. Only Sarah Goodfriend and Suzanne Bryant could marry because of medical issues. But that one ruling in Travis County is a major shift. This all came after a local judge in Austin ruled that the ban on same-sex marriage in Texas is unconstitutional. It was a broad ruling on a narrow case over the estate of a woman who died before signing a will. It's not exactly clear what happens next, but one thing is for sure, there will be plenty of challenges. The state Supreme Court halted any more same-sex weddings, and Attorney General Ken Paxton went a step further, asking the court to void that marriage. But as KXAN's Lindsey Bramson explains, other couples still see this as a victory.
September 4th, 2011 was a day Ashley Wolford and Amanda Rayner will always remember.
We had a full-blown wedding. We had a ceremony. Like I said, 150 people attended, and we had a friend of ours officiate it. It was very officiated.
Together 9 years, Ashley and Amanda consider themselves married.
To us, we're married. To us, we'll always be married.
But Thursday, when Suzanne Bryant and Sarah Goodfriend officially went outside the Travis County Courthouse, they were given hope they've never had before.
Because I was at work when I heard about it, and I wanted to rush home and be like, "Hun, let's go get married today," you know? And then all of a sudden, they're like, "Oh, no, that's not going to work out."
Last year, Ashley and Amanda filed for a domestic partnership, which Travis County does recognize. But this piece of paper still doesn't give them the kind of rights a married couple gets. And if something were to happen to one of them, they worry about each other's future. But yet they're still not going to pursue a court order to legally be married.
You see them turn over a judge's decision. It can be a little disheartening and can make you not go down and spend the time, energy, and money that it takes to go and file.
In the meantime, they're still holding on to hope that one day things can be different. Lindsey Bramson, KXAN News.
There are several court cases that could decide the fate of gay marriage. A challenge against the state's ban is currently in the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, plus the United States Supreme Court is expected to rule sometime later this year. What's going on in Texas definitely has implications across the country. Coming up, I sit down with Congressman John Carter as we talk immigration and marriage when State of Texas In Depth returns. From gay marriage to immigration, several important issues affect people in Texas and the rest of the country. This week I spoke with Republican Congressman John Carter, who chairs the Homeland Security Appropriations Subcommittee.
I'm not going to say against the call of that judge, but the law in Texas is pretty clear. The definition of marriage is clearly in the statute, and I'm an old law and order guy who believes in the statute prevails.
Because so many states have changed that law and flipped to make this...
We're the sovereign state of Texas. We get to make our own laws.
Do you think this is the way it's going to go eventually, though?
I think they picked the fight. We'll see what happens.
One thing you do have to get in the middle of, though, is with the Department of Homeland Security's budget.
That's my baby.
Yeah, so what's going on right now as far as funding it? I know that you have been very vocal about not letting DHS funds be used for what Obama's plan is right now as far as his immigration rule.
Well, his November surprise right after Election Day, you know, it's an overreach as far as I'm concerned. And as the Congress is concerned, it's way overreach of executive power. There's no laws on the books that back up what he's doing. He's basically ignoring the laws as they exist and trying to create new law. And that's an overreach. I'm very proud of the Brownsville court issuing the injunction. I'm hoping that will help us get our bill, which was passed by the House with a strong number, off the desk and into debate in the Senate. They've been blocking debate now. The Democrats have blocked debate on 3 votes. But the truth is they ought to get in there and let's have a debate. If they want to amend the bill, and let's go to conference and get it fixed.
Yeah, they need 60 votes in the Senate. Do you feel like you're going to be able to sway any Democrats?
Well, we've got 54 Republicans. There were 7 Democrats that ran in the last election saying they did not and would not support the president's amnesty if he proposed it. Well, unfortunately, they didn't step up. Maybe this would be some encouragement to have them step up and at least get closure so we can have a debate.
What if the president decides to veto that funding decision?
He certainly could. And if he does, he'll be basically defunding a very good bill for funding the national security of our homeland.
What changes if he does veto it? I mean,
Nothing changes in that the people will still be working. They'll be working without a paycheck. And, you know, you and I both know you can't work very long without a paycheck before things like your credit cards come due and your mortgage comes due and then overdue, and then all of a sudden you're looking at foreclosure. I don't want my Border Patrol or my ICE agents to have to go through that misery. I'd like to see us pass the bill. It's a good bill. It's an adequate funding for the people where it needs to be done. Quite honestly, I don't have any debate with Jay Johnson. He thinks it's a good bill, and he's part of the administration, the Secretary of Homeland. We need to get that appropriation bill passed, but we're not going to give up on the fight with the president. But fortunately, we've got a weapon now, the injunction out of Brownsville.
The immigration impact, what the court rulings could mean for the families in Texas and across the country. Coming up, our roundtable, Caitlin Bainey from the Equal Justice Center and Julian Aguilar from the Texas Tribune. Welcome back. Politics aside, the decisions made in the courtroom and Capitol on immigration affect real people on both sides of the border. That's why we brought our roundtable of experts, Caitlin Bainey, an attorney from the Equal Justice Center, which works with low-income people living in the country illegally, and Julian Aguilar, who covers the Texas-Mexico border for our partners, the Texas Tribune. Welcome to both of you.
Thank you for having us.
So let's talk about immigration. With what has happened with the judge in Brownsville, how is that immediately going to change things that we see here in Texas?
Well, immediately here in Texas and across the board, it's stopped the program that was supposed to begin on Wednesday, which was the expanded version of the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals. And it's, I guess, currently it's on track to postpone the DAPA, which the United States government was supposed to start taking applications for in May. It depends on, I guess, the strategy of the Department of Justice, whether they ask Judge Hainan to stay his own order or whether they appeal to the Fifth Circuit on the merits of the case. And it's just sort of right now, I think it's kind of in limbo, but USCIS and DHS did say day before yesterday that we have to, on Wednesday, that they were not going to start taking applications as planned. So right now it's temporarily on hold. It's, you know, who knows how long that's going to happen.
Are you already seeing an impact with your clients?
Yeah, so what we're trying to do is just make sure that people understand that this is just a temporary delay. It's just a bump in the road. The judge's ruling is based on no established legal principles, and we are quite confident, and many legal scholars, you know, across the ideological spectrum agree that this lawsuit has no merit and that the programs will be forthcoming. And so we are encouraging our clients and their family members to continue to prepare in the ways that they were before for these programs, collecting their documents, saving money for application fees, and to not be susceptible to fraudulent schemes.
But with what's happening right now with the judge's ruling, how long can that play out before you do start seeing an impact or things start changing for your clients?
Well, the judge's ruling could stand for a number of days or weeks or months, depending on how quickly the United States and DOJ would like to appeal the judge's injunction. So, I mean, we're kind of stuck in limbo until that happens, but they could, you know, submit an emergency appeal to stay the injunction, which could happen very quickly or not. And I think that there are some probably political considerations that go into and form the decision as to whether to pursue an emergency appeal or not, given that, you know, the entire DHS budget is kind of on the line right now.
What are you hearing at the Capitol?
At the Capitol, on Wednesday, you know, state's leadership, they kind of had a press conference that was like a victory lap almost, kind of celebrating the injunction, saying this is a victory for Texas and the rule of law. And they were asked as well, you know, how are they going to move forward? And I think they're waiting on the White House to see how they go. Meanwhile, as you said, at the congressional level, DHS funding runs out at the end of next week. A lot of folks thought that because this program was temporarily on hold, and that would give the Republicans and Democrats a little bit of wiggle room to say, okay, let's just fund DHS, because the main hang-up there is a provision to strip the president of his executive action powers in this program. But it seems like both sides are pretty much standing their ground right now. And I talked to Congressman Henry Cuellar earlier this week, and he said, if DHS shuts down, it's not like the ports are going to be closed and you're not going to see Border Patrol agents. What's going to happen is something similar to sequestration, where they're going to work but not get paid, which affects morale and obviously the manpower boots on the ground, that's going to drop by about 10–15% across the board.
Right, and I spoke with Congressman John Carter today, and he actually said that by not being able to fund DHS, that they would lose out on some programs they were hoping that would actually help the illegal immigrants, like the children would get better housing down on the border. What do you think about that?
I don't know that I can speak to that specifically, but what we do know that has been a success is DHS's original DACA program, which was enacted in 2012, that is still standing today, even after the injunction late Monday night. And I think that that really speaks volumes to the staying power of a program that's already been implemented and how hard it will be to roll back progress that's already been made.
And do you feel like that Democrats are going to budge on this? I know they have to have 60 votes in the Senate. They're pretty close, I think 54 right now.
You know, it depends. I think there's a lot of optimism that this is just a staring contest, and at the end of the day, something will eventually get done, whether it's a continuing resolution to fund it temporarily or to pass the appropriation in the same fashion that the House did. But it's, you know, it's kind of too soon to tell. More to your point, what you were saying about some of these programs that could be affected. DHS is a vast agency. I mean, a lot of people assume Border Patrol and CBP, but you have to, I mean, include TSA, USCIS, which is the program charged with initiating some of these orders, and I mean, even the Coast Guard. So I'm not a gambling person, but I'd be very hesitant to assume that both members on the right and the left are going to be willing to defund an agency that's so vast. If
the federal funding doesn't come through, do you feel like Texas will step up and try to do more when it comes to money down on the border?
Well, that's already in play. As you know, Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick, he requested $12 million to extend the National Guard through the end of May. They're scheduled to wrap up at the end of next month. Speaker Strauss was a little hesitant about jumping on board with that immediately. He has since said he will work with the leadership to see what can be done on the border. He doesn't think the National Guard is the best idea. You have the National Guard members themselves saying, you know, we're a citizens militia, we're not supposed to be deployed for this amount of time, so that's still in play. But Governor Abbott did say that the National Guard is going to be down there for an extended period of time. He wouldn't put a finite sort of timeline on it, you know, through the next biennium, through May, through August. But I think while all this plays out, you're not going to see the National Guard sort of up and gone anytime soon.
Any final thoughts on that, Caitlin?
Well, I just think that, you know, Governor Abbott, he mentioned in a statement the other day that border security was going to be one of his emergency agenda items during this legislative period, and to the tune of doubling the budget, the Texas state's budget spending down at the border in order to secure it. And I think that this is incredibly wrong-headed if he's trying to kind of avoid a repeat of what happened last summer, because, you know, that was an instance where you have refugee children fleeing violence and extreme poverty and all manner of untold horrors. They're actually running 2 Border Patrol agents, not trying to evade them. And so I think to send another 500 agents to the border is just a colossal waste of taxpayer money.
All right, a lot could happen in the next week.
Definitely.
Thank you both for being with us.
Thank you.
Thanks.
And thank you for joining us as well. Remember, you can join us every Sunday morning in the 8:30 half hour for a broader look at Texas politics. Stay tuned for Meet the Press coming up at 9. I'm Josh Hinkle. Have a great day.